before I tell you this story, I need to know if you've ever driven through South Dakota reservation land at night. Not the tourist routes with their scenic overlooks and historical markers, but the real back roads that cut through Pine Ridge, where cell service dies, and the only lights you'll see for 50 miles are your own headlights reflecting off eyes that watch from the darkness. If you have, drop a comment and tell me what you saw. And if you haven't, hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to tell you might save your life if you ever find yourself out here after dark. My name is Nathan Whitebird, and I'm a law enforcement ranger with the Oglala Lakota Parks and Recreation Department stationed at Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. I've been back for 2 weeks now, after spending 8 years with Denver PD. I left the reservation when I was 22, convinced that the city offered something better than the wind-scoured plains and poverty of reservation life. I worked my way up from patrol to detective, got good at my job, built a life in Colorado that had nothing to do with being Lakota except when it was convenient at department diversity events. Then, 3 months ago, my younger sister Maya died on Highway 18, about 15 miles east of the Badlands Overlook. Single vehicle collision, the accident report said. She'd swerved hard enough to leave 50 feet of skid marks, then went off the embankment and rolled her truck 4 times. No alcohol in her system, no drugs, no mechanical failure. The investigating officer's report said she appeared to have swerved to avoid something in the road, but the road was empty. No deer carcass, no debris, nothing. Just one detail that bothered me enough to read the report 6 times. Animal tracks near the crash site. Elk, the report specified, but noted as unusual because the stride length was wrong. Too short. Almost like something on 2 legs trying to walk like something on 4. I'd ignored Maya's calls the week before she died. She'd left 4 voicemails, each one more desperate than the last, talking about things that didn't make sense. Shadows that moved wrong, sounds in the Badlands at night, feeling like something was following her. I'd written it off as stress. Maya worked at the tribal college, taught Lakota language to kids who were losing it, and I figured the isolation was getting to her. I was too busy with a gang shooting case to fly out for a weekend. Now she was dead, and I couldn't stop hearing that last voicemail. Her voice shaking, whispering like she was afraid something might hear. Nate, if something happens to me, don't let them tell you it was an accident. The silent ones are back. The elders were right. Please just... Then the message cut off like she'd hung up in a hurry. I handed in my resignation to Denver PD the day after her funeral and applied to Oglala Lakota Parks and Recreation. The position was law enforcement ranger, basically a cross between a park ranger and tribal police with jurisdiction over the parks, recreation areas, and backcountry of the Pine Ridge Reservation. 2 million acres of high plains, badlands formations, and land so remote that you could disappear for days before anyone thought to look for you. The drive from Denver to Pine Ridge takes about 7 hours if you don't stop. I stopped 3 times, not because I needed to, but because the closer I got to the reservation, the heavier the weight on my chest became. I'd left 8 years ago promising myself I'd never come back except for holidays. The reservation had felt like a trap, a place where people got stuck in cycles of poverty and trauma that went back generations. I was going to be different, going to make something of myself in the outside world. But Maya had stayed. She'd believed in the community, in preserving the language and traditions, in the idea that being Lakota meant something more than statistics about unemployment and addiction. And something out here had killed her. The Parks and Recreation headquarters sat on the eastern edge of Pine Ridge, a low building made of tan stone that blended with the landscape. A handful of white trucks with the tribal seal were parked outside, Inside, the building smelled like coffee and dust, with maps covering every wall showing the vast territory we were responsible for patrolling. Captain Joe Blackhorn met me in the hallway. He was maybe 55, with iron gray hair worn long and a face carved by decades of sun and wind. His ranger uniform was crisp, his boots worn but polished. I'd known him peripherally growing up. He'd been friends with my grandfather. "Nathan Whitebird," he said, shaking my hand with a grip that was stronger than it looked. "Your grandfather would be glad you came home, even if it took Maya's death to bring you." The bluntness was pure reservation style, no dancing around painful subjects. "Thank you, Captain. Joe, when it's just us." He gestured for me to follow him into his office. "You worked Denver PD for 8 years. Good record, solved a lot of cases. Then you put in for transfer here, taking a pay cut and moving to one of the most remote law enforcement jurisdictions in the country." He sat behind his desk and studied me. "Why?" I'd prepared an answer about wanting to serve my community, about feeling called to come home. All of it was true in its way, but Joe's eyes told me he already knew the real reason. "My sister died 3 months ago," I said, "and the accident report doesn't make sense." "No, it doesn't." Joe opened a drawer and pulled out a file. Maya's accident report, but thicker than the version I'd been sent. What you got was the official version. This is what really happened. He slid the file across. Inside were crime scene photos I hadn't seen before. Maya's truck crumpled at the bottom of the ravine, but the photos also showed the road surface where she'd swerved. Deep gouges in the asphalt, like something heavy had landed there, and tracks leading away from the crash site. Elk tracks, clearly visible in the dirt shoulder. But as the photos followed the trail, the tracks changed. The hoof prints began showing claw marks between the toes. Then the stride shortened. Then there were photos of prints that looked almost human, except for the odd spacing and the way the weight distributed wrong. "What am I looking at?" I asked, though my mouth had gone dry. "Something that started on 2 legs, changed to 4, then changed back." Joe's voice was matter-of-fact. "Your sister saw it on the road. She swerved to avoid it. And I think it followed her down into that ravine and watched her die." "That's not possible." "Show him," Joe called toward the doorway. A younger ranger entered, maybe 24 or 25, with the compact build of someone who'd grown up doing ranch work. His uniform had his name stitched on it. T brings plenty. "Nathan, this is Tommy brings plenty. He'll be your partner while you learn the territory." Tommy shook my hand, his expression cautious. "Heard about your sister. I'm sorry. She was good people." "Tommy responded to a call last month," Joe said. "Show him the photos." Tommy pulled out his phone and brought up a series of images. They showed tracks in red dirt, starting with clear boot prints, size 11 or 12, deep tread pattern. But over the course of maybe 30 feet, the prints transformed. The boot sole became less defined. Toes began separating. The heel narrowed. By the end of the sequence, they were elk tracks, cloven hooves pressed deep into the earth. "I tracked these for 2 miles, Tommy said quietly. "Started human, went to elk, then back to human near an old homestead. Same prints, same stride, showing the transition." I examined the photos, looking for signs of fakery. The lighting was consistent. The dirt showed natural weather patterns, no signs of staging. This could be 2 different trails intersecting. That's what I told myself at first. Tommy scrolled to another photo, until I found this. The image showed a single print, half transformed. Part boot sole, part cloven hoof, like something caught mid-change. "I don't understand what I'm looking at," I said. But that was a lie. I understood perfectly. I just didn't want to. Joe stood up and walked to a frame on the wall. I'd noticed it when I came in but hadn't paid attention. It looked like an official document, old and yellowed, mounted behind glass. "Before you start patrol, you need to read these," he said. The document was titled, "Oglala Lakota Parks and Recreation Protocols for Law Enforcement Rangers." Below that, 7 rules were typed in both English and Lakota. 1. Never follow elk tracks that show human stride pattern, especially if they lead toward the Badlands. Mark the location and report immediately. 2. If you hear complete silence in the Badlands, no wind, no insects, no birds, leave the area immediately. Do not investigate. Do not wait to see what caused it. 3. During the dark of the moon, do not patrol Highway 18 between midnight and dawn unless accompanied by an elder who has completed the protection ceremony. 4. If you encounter someone walking alone on back roads at night and they refuse to speak or make eye contact, do not approach. Radio for backup and maintain distance. 5. If you hear a family member's voice calling from outside your residence at night, verify their location before opening the door. The silent ones can wear voices like masks. 6. Antlers arranged in spiral patterns indicate a calling site. Do not disturb. Do not photograph. Contact tribal elders immediately. 7. If something walks on 2 legs but moves like it's walking on 4, end all contact and leave. These are not human, no matter what shape they wear. I read through the list twice, then looked at Joe. "This is serious? These are actual departmental protocols?" "Written by my predecessor in 1989, after we lost 3 rangers in 1 year." Joe's expression was grave. "Before that, the protocols were passed down orally through the elders. But after Deputy Ranger Sarah Combs last disappeared on Highway 18 and her truck was found with elk tracks all around it, we decided to write them down, make them official policy." This sounds like folklore, like traditional beliefs, not law enforcement procedure. "You spent 8 years in Denver learning to think like a white cop," Joe said, not unkindly. "Evidence, facts, things you can prove in court. But you're not in Denver anymore, Nathan. Out here, some things don't need proving because everyone already knows they're real." Tommy spoke up. "Your sister called me 2 weeks before she died. Asked if I'd seen anything unusual on Highway 18 near the Badlands. Said she kept seeing the same elk standing on the shoulder at night, but it watched her car go by. Tracked her with its head. Elk don't do that. Why didn't anyone tell me this?" The anger in my voice surprised me. "Because you were in Denver playing city cop," Tommy said bluntly. "Maya tried to tell you, left you messages, but you didn't want to hear about reservation problems, did you?" He was right, and it stung worse because I couldn't deny it. Joe held up a hand. "What's done is done. Nathan's here now. Tommy, show him the district. Brief him on the current situation. We've got a welfare check request that came in this morning. Elderly resident hasn't been heard from in 4 days." "Who?" Tommy asked. "Henry Reddoor. Lives out past Manderson up in the hills." Something passed across Tommy's face. Concern or maybe recognition. "Problem?" Joe asked. "Henry's a traditional. Keeps to himself. If he's not answering his phone, there's usually a reason." Tommy looked at me. "You ready for your first call?" We headed out to the patrol truck, a white Ford F-250 with the tribal seal on, the doors. The cab smelled like coffee and sage. Tommy drove, taking us west on Highway 18, the same road where Maya had died. The protocols, I said after a few minutes of silence. You actually believe all that? I've been a ranger for 4 years, Tommy said. I've seen things that don't fit in any training manual. Tracks that change, animals that move wrong, and sounds. He trailed off. The Badlands at night, when the silence comes, it's not like regular quiet. It's like something swallowed all the sound, like the world is holding its breath. And you think something supernatural killed my sister? I think Maya saw something on Highway 18 that night, something that made her swerve hard enough to leave 50 feet of skid marks. Tommy glanced at me, and I think whatever she saw is still out there. We drove in silence for a while, the landscape rolling past. High plains grass, scattered pines, and in the distance, the jagged formations of the Badlands rising from the earth like broken teeth. The Silent Ones, I said. Maya mentioned them in her last voicemail. What are they? Tommy's hands tightened on the wheel. Old story, older than the Lakota people. The elders say that before humans came to this land, there were others. Things that walked and hunted and claimed this territory as theirs. When the people arrived, there was conflict, war. Eventually, the medicine people performed ceremonies that pushed these things back, established boundaries. Most of the old things left or went dormant, but some stayed. The Silent Ones are what we call the things that remained. They walk the boundary between worlds, between animal and human, between living and something else. That's mythology. Maybe. Tommy turned onto a dirt road heading north. But mythology exists because people experienced something they needed to explain. And out here, people are still experiencing things that don't fit modern explanations. As we drove deeper into the back country, I noticed Tommy checking his mirrors more frequently than seemed necessary. And twice, I caught him glancing at the sage bundle hanging from his rearview mirror, touching it like a talisman. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the landscape in shades of gold and shadow. And somewhere ahead, an elderly man hadn't answered his phone in 4 days. In Denver, that would mean a welfare check, probably find him sick or injured or dead from natural causes. But Tommy's tension, the weight of those protocols, and the memory of tracks that changed from human to elk told me this was going to be something different, something that I wasn't ready for, no matter how many years I'd spent as a cop. We crested a hill, and Tommy pointed to a small house in the valley below. Henry Red Door's place, about as isolated as it gets out here. As we descended toward the house, I saw the first sign that something was wrong. The front door stood wide open, swaying slightly in the wind, and on the ground in front of it, barely visible from this distance, was a dark circle that looked like it had been deliberately drawn in the dirt. Tommy saw it too. He slowed the truck. Nathan, when we get down there, you follow my lead. And if I say we leave immediately. No arguments. What do you think we're going to find? I don't know. But that circle on the ground. He touched the sage bundle again. That's not good. That's not good at all. We pulled up to Henry Red Door's house slowly, gravel crunching under the tires. Tommy killed the engine but didn't immediately get out. He was staring at that dark circle on the ground, his jaw tight. Stay behind me, he said quietly. And keep your hand near your weapon, though I don't think bullets will help if this is what I think it is. We approached on foot. The house was a small ranch-style structure, probably built in the 70s, with faded blue paint and a sagging porch. The open door revealed darkness inside, and even from 20 feet away, I could smell it. Death, yes. I'd smelled enough bodies in Denver to recognize that sweet, rotten odor. But there was something else underneath it. Something sharper, like ozone after a lightning strike, mixed with burnt sage and a mineral smell I couldn't identify. The circle on the ground was maybe 10 feet in diameter, drawn with some kind of gray powder that had an odd shimmer to it in the afternoon light. And inside the circle, arranged with deliberate precision, were elk antlers. Dozens of them, placed in a spiral pattern that drew the eye toward the center and made my head hurt if I looked at it too long. "Don't step in it," Tommy said, pulling out his radio. "Unit 7 to dispatch. We're at the Red Door residence. We have a suspicious death scene, requesting Captain Blackhorn and..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Requesting elder response. Traditional protocols may apply." "Copy, Unit 7. The dispatcher's voice crackled back. "Captain Blackhorn is en route. Elder Louise Stands Fast has been contacted." Tommy circled around the antler spiral, giving it wide berth, and I followed. The front door's frame was intact, no signs of forced entry. We announced ourselves as law enforcement and entered. Henry Red Door sat in a wooden chair in the center of his living room, facing east according to traditional practice. He'd been dead for at least 3 days, maybe 4. But it wasn't the body that made me stop and stare. It was what surrounded him. Another circle, this one drawn on the floor with the same gray powder. More antlers arranged around him, these pointing outward like spokes on a wheel. And at 4 cardinal points around the circle, small piles of what looked like ash mixed with something else, something that glinted with fragments of bone. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. "That's corpse powder," Tommy said, his voice tight. "Ground bone and ash from the dead. It's used in the worst kind of ceremonies. Someone didn't just kill Henry, they marked him. They called something to him." I moved closer, careful not to disturb anything, studying the scene with my detective's eye. Henry's face was frozen in an expression of absolute terror, mouth open, eyes wide. No visible injuries, no signs of struggle. But his hands gripped the chair arms so hard that the wood had splintered under his fingers. "Cause of death?" I asked. "Fear," Tommy said. He was literally scared to death. "I've seen this once before, 2 years ago. Different victim, same setup. The medical examiner ruled it cardiac arrest brought on by extreme psychological trauma, but he couldn't explain what could cause that level of fear." I pulled out my phone and started photographing the scene, though my hands were shaking slightly. This wasn't like any crime scene I'd worked in Denver. There, violence had clear causes and effects. Bullets, knives, blunt objects. Even the worst murders made a kind of sick sense. But this... "Tommy, look at the floor." Between the antlers, pressed into the dust, were tracks, not boot prints, hoof prints, cloven and deep, as if something heavy had walked a circle around Henry while he died. But some of the prints showed toes, human toes, splayed and wrong. Tommy keyed his radio again. "Dispatch, we need a medical examiner, but tell them to hold at the gate until the elder arrives. This scene needs traditional cleansing before we can process it fully." As we worked, documenting everything without touching the circles or antlers, I became aware of a sound. Faint at first, almost below hearing. A whistle, low and melodic, coming from somewhere outside. Then another whistle answered it from a different direction. Then a third. Tommy's head snapped up. "We need to go. Now!" "We haven't finished processing." Protocol 5. Whistling from multiple directions. We leave. But before we could move, I saw them through the window. 3 figures standing on the ridgeline about 200 yards from the house. They were too far away to make out details, but something about their proportions was wrong. Too tall, too thin, and the way they stood. Tommy handed me his binoculars without a word. I raised them and focused on the figures. They were dressed in normal clothes, jeans, flannel shirts, one wearing a baseball cap, but their bodies didn't move right. When one shifted its weight, the motion was jerky, puppet-like, and their legs bend backwards at the knee, I said, my mouth dry. Digitigrade, like deer or elk. Tommy was already backing toward the door. They're watching us. Probably have been since we got here. We need to leave before. The whistling intensified, now coming from all sides. North, south, east, west, coordinated and closing in. We ran for the truck. I kept expecting something to come bursting out of the brush, to attack, but nothing moved. The 3 figures on the ridge just stood there, watching us scramble into the vehicle. Tommy started the engine and we peeled out, kicking up dust and gravel. "Don't look back," he said, though I could see his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. "If they're following, we don't want to know." We drove in silence for 5 minutes before Tommy finally relaxed slightly. "You okay?" "No." "What the hell were those things?" "Exactly what the protocols warn about. Something that walks on 2 legs but moves like it walks on 4. He glanced at me. "Now do you believe?" I didn't answer. I was too busy trying to rationalize what I'd seen. People with some kind of orthopedic condition, costumes, teenagers playing a sick prank near a death scene. But none of those explanations fit the cold certainty in my gut that I'd just seen something that shouldn't exist. Captain Blackhorn met us at the station. We briefed him on everything. The corpse powder circles, the antlers, Henry's expression, the figures on the ridge. He listened without interrupting, his face growing darker. "Elder Louise is on her way," he said. "Nobody goes back to that site until she's performed the cleansing. And Nathan," he looked at me seriously, "you need to understand something. This isn't an isolated incident. This is the 3rd death like this in 3 months. 3 months? My stomach dropped. Since Maya died? The pattern started with your sister, then Francis Bad Wound, then Henry, all during the dark moon, all found with evidence of calling ceremonies. Joe pulled up a map with 3 locations marked, and all within 10 miles of Highway 18. Someone's hunting, Tommy said quietly. Or something is. Joe looked at me. Nathan, go home. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start a real investigation. But tonight, you follow the protocols. Keep your doors locked. Don't answer if you hear anyone calling your name, and keep this with you. He handed me a small leather pouch on a cord, similar to the sage bundle in Tommy's truck, but smaller. Protection medicine, he said. Your grandfather would want you to have it. I drove to the small trailer I'd rented on the edge of Pine Ridge, my mind churning. The rational part of me, the part trained in Denver, the part that believed in evidence and procedure, kept trying to explain away what I'd seen. But I couldn't unsee those figures on the ridge or the way their legs bent wrong. The trailer was basic, but clean. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, living area with furniture that had seen better days. I unpacked my boxes, found the bottle of whiskey I'd brought from Denver, and poured myself 2 fingers. Maya's last voicemail was still on my phone. I'd listened to it so many times I had it memorized, but I played it again anyway. Nate, if something happens to me, don't let them tell you it was an accident. The silent ones are back. The elders were right. Please, just... The message ended abruptly, but this time, listening in the dark of my trailer with the memory of those figures fresh in my mind, I heard something I'd missed before. In the background, just before she hung up, there was a sound. A whistle, low and melodic, the same whistle I'd heard at Henry Reddoor's house. I was pouring my third whiskey when I heard my sister's voice outside the trailer. "Nate?" Maya's voice, exactly as I remembered it. Young, uncertain, with that slight rasp she got when she was scared. "Nate, I'm cold. Can you let me in?" Every instinct screamed at me to open the door. My baby sister was out there, cold and afraid, needing help. My hand was on the doorknob before my rational mind caught up. Protocol 5. If you hear a family member's voice calling from outside your residence at night, verify their location before opening the door. Maya was dead, buried 3 months ago in the tribal cemetery. "Nate, please!" The voice was so perfect, so exactly her. "I'm scared. There's something out here. I need you." I backed away from the door, my heart hammering. The voice continued, cycling through memories. Maya at 8 years old, crying after she fell off her bike. "It hurts, Nate. Make it stop hurting." Maya at 16, after a bad breakup. "Why does it feel like this? When does it stop?" Maya from that last voicemail. "The silent ones are back." Then the voice changed. It went through every emotion, begging, pleading, angry, screaming. "Why didn't you answer my calls? I needed you and you weren't there. You let me die alone. Nate, open this door." I sat on my couch with my service weapon in my lap, every light in the trailer blazing, and listened to something wear my dead sister's voice like a mask. It knew things only Maya would know, remembered conversations only we'd had, inside jokes, childhood fears, secrets we'd never told anyone else. And underneath it all, in the pauses between words, I could hear it breathing. Not human breathing. Something with too much lung capacity, inhaling and exhaling in long, slow cycles. This went on for hours. The voice would scream, then whisper, then sob. It tried being Maya at different ages, tried different tactics, different emotional hooks. Around 3 a.m, it tried being my mother, dead for 5 years, then my grandfather, then friends I'd lost. I never opened the door, never even looked out the window. I just sat there, clutching Joe's protection pouch, and survived until dawn. When the sun finally rose and light spilled through the trailer windows, the voices stopped. Silence, real and natural, settled over everything. Birds began singing. The morning wind picked up. I waited another hour before I opened the door. The ground around my trailer was covered in tracks, massive elk prints, pressed deep into the earth. But scattered among them were other prints, bare human feet, but wrong. The toes were too long, splayed too wide, and the weight distribution showed something that walked on both hooves and feet, shifting between them. Whatever had been outside my trailer all night, it hadn't been human, and it had known my sister well enough to wear her voice perfectly. I called Tommy. "I need to talk to Elder Louise, today, now." "What happened?" "Something visited me last night, something that knew Maya." My voice was shaking. "And I need to know what the hell we're really dealing with, because this isn't just murder. This is something else entirely." Tommy picked me up an hour later. I'd showered but couldn't wash away the feeling of being watched, of something having circled my trailer all night, wearing the voices of my dead. He took one look at the tracks around my home, and his jaw tightened. "Yeah," he said. "That's them, the silent ones." We drove to the tribal administration building where Elder Louise Stands Fast kept an office. The morning was cold and clear, frost still clinging to the shadows. I kept checking the mirrors, half expecting to see those figures on the ridge following us. "How many deaths did Captain Blackhorn say?" I asked. 3 in 3 months? "That's the official count. Henry, Francis Badwound, And Maya. Tommy's hands were tight on the wheel. But if you count disappearances that might be connected, the number gets worse. He pulled up a map on his phone at a stoplight, showed me. 7 red pins scattered across the reservation, all clustered around Highway 18, all within a 10-mile radius of the Badlands. 7 people, Tommy said. All went missing or died in the last 3 months, all during the dark moon when there's no light. Different ages, different genders, different circumstances. Some were found like Henry, scared to death with calling circles around them. Others just vanished. But there's a pattern. What pattern? They all reported seeing the same thing before they died or disappeared. An elk on the roadside that watched them. That tracked their vehicle with its head. That sometimes followed them. My mouth went dry. Maya mentioned an elk in one of her voicemails. I know. That's why I think she was the first. Or maybe she was just the first in this cycle, because according to the elders, this has happened before. The tribal administration building was a 2-story structure that served as the hub for various departments. Louise Stands Fast's office was on the 2nd floor, marked with her name in both English and Lakota. Tommy knocked, and a voice, old but strong, called out in Lakota. We entered a space that smelled of sage and sweet grass. The walls were covered with photographs spanning decades, ceremonies, gatherings, historical events. Louise Stands Fast sat behind a desk covered in papers, her silver hair worn in 2 long braids, her face a map of 87 years lived on this land. She wore a traditional dress, a ribbon skirt and shawl, and her eyes were the clearest, sharpest eyes I'd ever seen. Nathan Whitebird, she said in English, studying me. You look like your grandfather. He was a good man. Your sister looked like your grandmother, same fierce spirit. She gestured to chairs. Sit. We have much to discuss and little time. Elder Louise, I began, but she held up a hand. I know what happened at your trailer last night. The voices, the tracks. I felt the disturbance. She looked at me intently. Do you know why they came to you specifically? No. Because they remember your blood. Your family carries a mark that goes back 5 generations. She pulled out an old photograph, faded and creased. It showed a young woman in late 1800s clothing, standing stiffly for the camera. This is your great-great-grandmother, Wanblee Ska, White Eagle Woman. The photograph was taken in 1893 at the Pine Ridge Agency. She was 23 years old. The woman in the photo had my sister's eyes, the same fierce, determined expression Maya had worn when she decided to stay on the reservation and teach Lakota. During the winter of 1890, after the massacre at Wounded Knee, your great-great-grandmother was fleeing with other survivors through the Badlands. Louise continued. They were hunted by cavalry, starving, freezing. Many died, but Wanblee Ska survived, and when they found her 3 weeks later, she told a story that the elders recorded, but few believed. Louise opened a ledger book, old and leather-bound, and showed me pages written in Lakota with English translations added later. The handwriting was spidery, uncertain. She said that in the deepest part of the Badlands, when she thought she would die, they came to her. The silent ones. Beings that walked like men but moved like elk, that had been in this land since before the first people arrived. They circled her in the darkness, and their leader, if such things have leaders, touched her, marked her. Louise's finger traced the text. It offered her a choice. She could die there in the snow with so many others, or she could accept their mark and survive. The mark would pass to her children and her children's children. In exchange, The Silent Ones would remember her bloodline, would watch her descendants, would sometimes call them. Call them to what? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. To return what was borrowed. The mark saved her life, but it created a debt, a connection. Louise closed the book. Wanbli Ska lived to be 97 years old. She had 7 children. All survived, which was unusual in those times. They prospered, despite everything. But every few generations, the Silent Ones return. They remember the blood. They come calling. "Maya," I whispered. "They called Maya." "Yes, and they will call you. They already have." Louise reached into her desk and pulled out a leather bundle, larger and more elaborate than the one Joe had given me. "Your grandfather asked me to prepare this for his descendants. He knew this time would come. He saw the signs." She unwrapped the bundle, revealing items that meant nothing to my Denver cop brain, but everything to the part of me that was Lakota. Corn pollen in a small pouch, sage and sweet grass, stones marked with symbols, a small eagle feather, and something that looked like a piece of bone carved with intricate designs. "This is protection, but also acknowledgement," Louise said. "The Silent Ones cannot be fought with bullets or badges, Nathan Whitebird. They are older than our words for them, older than our ceremonies. But our people learned long ago how to establish boundaries, how to maintain balance. You must learn these things now, and you must learn them quickly." "I don't understand. If they marked my great-great-grandmother, saved her life, why are they killing us now?" "Because someone broke the balance." Louise's expression darkened. "For 5 generations, your family knew the stories, followed the protocols, maintained respect. But Maya didn't know. Your mother died when you were young, and your grandfather passed before he could teach you properly. So, when the calling began, Maya didn't recognize it. She ignored the signs, violated the boundaries unknowingly. And when someone violates the boundaries, the Silent Ones take what they're owed." Tommy finished quietly. The office door opened, and Captain Blackhorn entered with another man I didn't recognize. He was maybe 40, Lakota, wearing a suit that marked him as federal law enforcement. "Nathan, Tommy, this is FBI Special Agent Marcus Yellowhawk," Joe said. "He works out of the Rapid City office on reservation cases." Agent Yellowhawk shook our hands. His grip was firm, his eyes intelligent and weary. "I've been tracking unusual deaths and disappearances on Pine Ridge and other Lakota reservations for the past 5 years," he said. "I know what you're thinking. FBI guy is going to explain this all away with serial killers or drug cartels or human trafficking. But I grew up on Standing Rock. I know what walks in the spaces between. And this case," he pulled out a file. "This is the worst I've seen." He spread photos and reports across Louise's desk. 7 victims, as Tommy had said. But Agent Yellowhawk had more information. Autopsy reports, witness statements, forensic analysis that raised more questions than it answered. Francis Badwound, 63, found in his home with elk tracks leading to and from his body. Medical examiner found animal hair in his mouth and throat. Elk hair. But he didn't choke on it. It was found embedded in his tissues like it grew there. Maya Whitebird, 29, vehicle accident but with unexplained gouges in the road surface that match no known animal. Henry Reddoor, 76, cardiac arrest from extreme psychological trauma, surrounded by calling circles. Agent Yellowhawk looked up. And 4 disappearances in the same time frame. 2 teenagers, a middle-aged woman, and a tribal police officer. All last seen on or near Highway 18. All during the dark moon. "A pattern," I said. "More than a pattern, an escalation." Agent Yellowhawk pulled out another document. I've been coordinating with tribal police and rangers across multiple reservations. This same pattern appeared on Cheyenne River Reservation 6 years ago. 9 deaths over 4 months, then it stopped. Before that, Rosebud Reservation, 11 deaths. Before that, Standing Rock. It moves, stays for a season, then goes dormant for years. You're saying this is the same thing? Tommy asked. The same entities? I'm saying something is hunting across reservation lands, and it follows patterns that don't match human behavior. It targets people during the dark moon. It leaves evidence that violates natural law. And local traditions all call it the same thing, just in different languages. The things that walked before. The silent ones. The space between people. Louise spoke up. But this time is different. This time they're not just hunting opportunistically. Someone is calling them. Someone is performing the old ceremonies that were forbidden, opening doors that should stay closed. You mean the corpse powder circles, I said. Someone's deliberately summoning them. Yes, and we think we know who. Joe pulled up photos on his phone. 3 men, all Lakota, all in their 30s. Dennis Charging Bear and the Whirlwind twin brothers, Curtis and Colin. All 3 have been suspected in multiple grave desecrations over the past year. We could never prove it, but items have been stolen from burial sites. Bones, ceremonial objects, things that could be used in dark ceremonies. Where are they now? I asked. That's the problem. They're around, but careful. We don't have enough evidence for arrests on the grave desecrations, but if they're the ones performing the calling ceremonies. Joe's expression was grim. We need to find their ritual site, stop them before the next dark moon. Which is when? Agent Yellowhawk asked. 4 days, Louise said quietly. 4 days until the moon goes dark again. And if the pattern holds, they'll call the silent ones for another hunt. Over the next 3 days, I lived in 2 worlds. During the day, I was a law enforcement ranger, working with Tommy, Joe, and Agent Yellowhawk to track down Dennis Charging Bear and the Whirlwind twins. We interviewed family members, checked known associates, ran surveillance on their last known addresses. They were ghosts, appearing and disappearing across the reservation, never staying anywhere long enough to establish a pattern. But every evening, I went to Louise Standsfast's home, and she taught me things that my 8 years in Denver had never prepared me for. She taught me songs in Lakota that were older than the reservation system, older than the massacre, songs that established boundaries and called for protection. She showed me how to draw symbols in the dirt, specific patterns that marked safe spaces. She taught me about corn pollen offerings, about the 4 directions, about how to read signs in the land that spoke of disruption and imbalance. The silent ones are not evil in the way you understand evil, she explained on the second night, as I practiced drawing protection symbols. They are predators. They hunt. They hunger. But they also respect boundaries when those boundaries are properly established and maintained. Your great-great-grandmother survived because she respected them even as she feared them. She acknowledged their power, gave them their due, and in return, they let her live. But why do they hunt at all? I asked, frustrated as my symbol came out wrong for the 4th time. If they can be reasoned with, why kill people? Because someone is calling them. Someone is offering them prey, breaking the boundaries we established. The ceremonies Dennis and the twins are performing. They're not traditional Lakota ceremonies. They're older, darker, borrowed from peoples who lived here before us, who dealt with the silent ones differently. Louise guided my hand, showing me the correct way to curve the line. They're opening doors that were sealed for good reasons. On the 3rd day, Agent Yellowhawk got a break. A witness reported seeing Dennis charging Bear's truck heading into the Badlands National Park after hours, using a service road that was supposed to be locked. We assembled at dawn: Tommy, myself, Agent Yellowhawk, Joe, and 2 other rangers. "We go in prepared," Joe said as we geared up. "Weapons ready, but understand that bullets might not help if we encounter the wrong thing. Stay together, follow the protocols, and if Elder Louise says we need to leave, we leave immediately. No heroics." Louise herself insisted on coming, riding with Tommy and me. She was 87 but moved with purpose, carrying a medicine bundle that she'd prepared specifically for this mission. The service road led deep into the Badlands, that otherworldly landscape of striped rock formations and eroded peaks that looked more like another planet than South Dakota. The truck bounced over ruts and stones, climbing higher into the formations. After an hour, Tommy stopped. "Tracks, recent." We got out and examined the ground. Tire marks from Dennis's truck, along with boot prints from at least 3 people. And other tracks, the now familiar elk prints mixed with distorted human feet. "They've been here multiple times," Agent Yellowhawk said, photographing everything. "This is a regular site." We followed the tracks on foot, leaving 1 ranger with the vehicles. The path led through a narrow canyon where the walls pressed close, then opened into a natural amphitheater of red rock. And there, in the center, we found it. 7 elk skulls arranged in a perfect circle, all facing inward. In the center of the circle, a flat stone that showed signs of recent fire. And carved into the stone walls surrounding the space were symbols, hundreds of them, some old and weathered, some fresh. They weren't Lakota symbols. They were older, more primal, shapes that hurt to look at for too long. "This is it," Louise said, her voice heavy. "This is where they've been opening the doorway." Blood stained the central stone, fresh enough that it hadn't fully dried, and scattered around were offerings, tobacco, but also other things. Small bones, shreds of cloth that looked like they'd been torn from clothing, and photographs. I bent to look at them, and my heart stopped. Maya's face looked up at me from one of the photographs. It was from her faculty ID at the tribal college, and there were others. Francis Badwound, Henry Red Door, all the victims. Their photos arranged around the stone like a gallery of the dead. "They've been selecting targets," Agent Yellowhawk said quietly. "This isn't random hunting. They're choosing specific people, marking them, then performing ceremonies to call the silent ones to them." "But why these people?" Tommy asked. "What connects them besides the dark moon?" Louise picked up Maya's photograph, held it gently. "Blood," she said simply. "Look at the names. Whitebird, Badwound, Red Door. These are all descendants of survivors from Wounded Knee, all marked bloodlines, people whose ancestors made bargains with the silent ones to survive. Dennis and the twins are calling in old debts, offering up the marked ones to gain favor with the silent ones themselves." "That's insane," I said. "Why would anyone want to gain favor with those things?" "Power," Louise replied. "The ability to walk between forms, to hunt without being caught, to become something more than human." She looked at me. "Your great-great-grandmother refused that final transformation. She took only the mark of survival. But some people want more, want to become like the silent ones themselves." A sound echoed across the canyon, a whistle, low and melodic, then another answering it from the opposite direction. "They're here," Tommy said, his hand moving to his weapon. "We've been led here." We turned as 3 figures emerged from the canyon entrance, blocking our way out. Dennis Charging Bear and the Whirlwind Twins. They looked normal enough: jeans, flannel shirts, work boots. But the way they moved was wrong, fluid and jerky at the same time, like people learning to walk after injuries. "Ranger Whitebird," Dennis called out. His voice had that same multi-layered quality I'd heard in Maya's voice outside my trailer, like multiple people speaking at once. "Welcome home. Your sister spoke of you often. At the end, she screamed your name, wanted her big brother to save her." Rage flooded through me, hot and blinding. "You killed her. You called those things to her." "I opened the door," Dennis corrected. "The Silent Ones did what they've always done. They hunted. They fed. And in return, they taught us." He smiled, and it was wrong. Too wide, showing too many teeth. The Silent Ones walked this land before the Lakota came, before any humans came. They're not evil, Ranger. They're just old. They're just hungry. And they remember the deals made with your ancestors. "This ends now," Agent Yellowhawk said, his weapon drawn. "You're under arrest for grave desecration, conspiracy to commit murder, and—" Dennis laughed. "You can't arrest us. We're not fully human anymore. We're in between. We're becoming what this land needs, hunters who remember the old ways." The Whirlwind Twins moved, and the motion was impossible. One moment they were standing at the canyon entrance. The next, they'd covered 30 feet in a blur, their bodies shifting mid-movement, their legs bent backward, knees reversing, their hands elongated, fingers becoming too long. "Run!" Louise shouted. "Back to the vehicles, now!" We ran, and behind us, the 3 men who were becoming something else gave chase. Their whistling echoed off the canyon walls, and in the distance, I heard it answered. More whistling, many sources, the Silent Ones themselves, responding to the call. We'd found their ritual site, but in doing so, we'd walked right into their trap. We made it back to the vehicles, barely. The canyon walls channeled sound in strange ways, making it impossible to tell how close our pursuers were. Louise moved faster than any 87-year-old should, her hand gripping my arm with surprising strength. "Don't look back," she commanded. "If you see them mid-transformation, the image will mark you. Will make it easier for them to find you." We piled into the trucks, and Tommy floored it, the vehicle bouncing violently over the service road. Behind us, I could see Agent Yellowhawk's vehicle and the other rangers following. And beyond them, barely visible in the dust, 3 shapes that moved like nothing that should exist. "They're hurting us," Louise said, looking at the rearview mirror. "Pushing us toward Highway 18. That's where they want us for the dark moon." "How long until dark moon?" I asked. "Tonight, midnight." She pulled out her phone and made a call, speaking rapidly in Lakota. When she hung up, her face was grim. "I've called for help, traditional help, but they may not arrive in time." We regrouped at the ranger station. Within 2 hours, the place was packed with law enforcement from multiple jurisdictions: tribal police, FBI, Bureau of Indian Affairs officers, and rangers from across the reservation. Agent Yellowhawk had called in every resource he could access. Captain Blackhorn laid out the situation in the conference room. "Tonight is the dark of the moon. Based on the pattern, we expect Dennis Charging Bear and the Whirlwind Twins to perform another calling ceremony somewhere along Highway 18. We've identified their most likely location, near Stronghold Table in the Badlands. It's remote, it's sacred ground, and it has clear sight lines in all directions." He pulled up a tactical map. "We'll have units positioned at mile markers 47, 52, and 58. Air support is unavailable due to weather, but we have night vision equipment, thermal imaging, and body cameras on every officer. Rules of engagement. He paused. Lethal force is authorized if you feel your life is in danger, but understand that conventional weapons may not be effective against what we're facing. One of the tribal police officers raised his hand. Sir, are we seriously talking about shooting at skinwalkers? We're talking about stopping 3 men who've murdered at least 7 people and who may have undergone some kind of physical transformation through unknown means. Agent Yellowhawk said carefully, framing it in language that wouldn't sound insane. Whatever they've become, they're still subject to tribal and federal law. But Louise stands fast, stood up, and when she spoke, every Lakota person in the room listened. They are no longer men. They've crossed the boundary, accepted the transformation. By tonight's dark moon, they will be fully changed, and they will call the Silent Ones in numbers we haven't seen in 5 generations. The old ones are hungry, and they've been promised a feast. What do we do? One of the rangers asked. You establish a perimeter. You document. You protect civilians. But you do not engage unless you have no choice. Louise looked at me. The bloodline must close the door they've opened. That is the only way to end this. Everything else is just buying time. Night fell fast on the plains, the sun dropping below the horizon and taking all warmth with it. By 11 p.m., we were in position. I rode with Tommy and Louise in our patrol truck, stationed at mile marker 52 with clear view of the stronghold table area through night vision scopes. Agent Yellowhawk's voice came through the radio. All units, this is command. Maintain radio silence except for tactical calls. Night vision active. Report any movement. The temperature had dropped below freezing. Our breath fogged in the truck's cab, and despite the heater running, cold seeped through every gap. The kind of cold that felt wrong, too deep, like it was coming from somewhere other than the weather. At 11:43, Tommy spotted them. Movement. Northeast, approximately 800 yards. 3 figures approaching the table. Through the night vision scope, I watched Dennis and the twins climb the rocky formation of Stronghold Table. They moved with that jerky, wrong gait, but faster than before. More fluid, like they were getting better at whatever they were becoming. At the top, they arranged themselves in a triangle formation. Even from this distance, I could see them swaying, chanting. And then they began to change. It started with their spines. Through the scope, I watched as Dennis's back arched unnaturally, vertebrae extending, adding segments that shouldn't exist. His neck elongated, his legs bent backward at the knee, the bones breaking with sounds I could hear even across the distance, sharp cracks like gunfire. Jesus Christ, Tommy whispered. Are you seeing this? The whirlwind twins mirrored the transformation. Their fingers stretched, bones pushing through skin, becoming something between human hands and hooves. Their faces distorted, jaws extending, teeth multiplying. But the worst part was their eyes. They caught the infrared light and glowed green in the night vision, reflecting like animal eyes, but with an intelligence that was terrifyingly aware. All units, confirm visual on suspects. Agent Yellowhawk's voice came through, tight with tension. 1 by 1, units confirmed. Everyone was watching the impossible happen in real time. The transformation took maybe 5 minutes. When it finished, 3 man elk hybrids stood on Stronghold Table, massive and wrong, their antlers spreading wide against the star-filled sky. They threw back their heads and made a sound, not a whistle, not a scream, but something that vibrated in my chest and made my teeth ache, and the sound was answered. From every direction around Highway 18, whistles began. Dozens of them, maybe more. The Silent Ones responding to the call. We have multiple contacts, one of the rangers radioed. Repeat, Multiple contacts approaching from all vectors. They're everywhere. Through the scope, I watched them emerge from the darkness. Figures that walked on 2 legs, but moved like they walked on 4. Some were fully transformed into the elk hybrid form. Others were still partly human, caught in various stages of change. But they all converged on Highway 18, drawn by the ceremony on Stronghold Table. And then IT appeared. The thing that manifested at the center of the triangle formation was 9 feet tall, maybe more. Its body was somewhere between human and elk, but ancient, emaciated, like something that had starved for generations. Its skull was elk bone, bleached white, with antlers that spread impossibly wide and seemed to branch in ways that hurt to look at. Where it walked, sound died. The whistling stopped. The wind ceased. Even our radios went to static. "What the hell is that?" Tommy's voice was barely audible. "The old one," Louise whispered. "The first of the silent ones. The one that marked Wanbli Ska. It's been called back fully into this world." The creature turned its skull face toward our position, and even though we were 800 yards away in a dark truck, I knew it saw us. Knew we were there. Its eye sockets were empty, but they fixed on me with absolute certainty, and a voice filled my head without going through my ears. "Whitebird blood, the debt comes due. All units, fall back." Agent Yellowhawk's voice cut through the static. "I repeat, fall back to Highway 187. We are not equipped for this." But it was too late. The silent ones attacked. They came from everywhere at once. The BIA vehicle at mile marker 47 was swarmed by 3 of the creatures. Over the radio, we heard screaming, then the sound of metal tearing. Then, nothing but static. "Unit 3 is down!" someone shouted. "Something just tore the door off. They're inside the vehicle." "Unit 5, we're under attack. They're on the hood. They're..." The radio dissolved into chaos. Multiple units calling for help, reporting impossible things, their voices cutting off mid-transmission. "We need to move," Tommy said, starting the engine. "Now." We pulled onto Highway 18 heading south, and immediately I saw them. Silent ones on the roadway, standing in groups of 2 and 3, watching us approach. Tommy accelerated, hoping to drive through them, but they didn't move. One stepped in front of our truck, and we hit it at 60 miles per hour. There was no impact. We passed straight through it like it wasn't there, but the temperature inside the cab dropped to freezing instantly. Frost formed on the windows, and that voice filled my head again. "You cannot run from the debt." Behind us, Agent Yellowhawk's vehicle was in pursuit, but silent ones were leaping onto it. I watched through the back window as creatures landed on his roof, their clawed hands scrabbling for purchase. One of them punched through the passenger window, its elongated arm reaching inside. "Yellowhawk's in trouble," I shouted. Tommy was doing 80 now, 85, pushing the truck to its limits. But the silent ones kept pace. They ran alongside us on the open plains flanking the highway, their stride impossibly long, their movements fluid and terrible. Some were on all 4s, some on 2 legs, some switching between as they ran. One leaped onto our hood, its face pressed against the windshield, part human, part elk, all nightmare. Its mouth opened too wide and it screamed, a sound that cracked the windshield glass. "Hold on!" Tommy yanked the wheel hard, swerving. The creature tumbled off, but 2 more took its place, 1 on each side of the truck. They gripped the mirrors and door handles, their faces appearing in our windows, studying us with those reflected eyes. Louise was chanting, loud and strong, her hands pressed together with something clutched between them. The creatures recoiled slightly from her side of the truck, giving us a few seconds of breathing room. "Unit 7, this is command." Agent Yellowhawk's voice broke through the static. "Nathan, if this goes bad, finish it. The Elder will tell you how." His transmission cut off as his vehicle was forced off the road. I watched it tumble down an embankment, rolling twice before coming to rest in a gully. "Yellowhawk!" Tommy started to brake. "No!" Louise commanded. "Keep driving. We cannot help him if we're dead." We were approaching mile marker 60, doing 90 miles per hour, and the road ahead was filled with them. Dozens of silent ones standing in the highway, a wall of transformed flesh and bone. Behind us, more gave chase. We were boxed in. "I can't drive through that many," Tommy said. "You won't have to." Louise grabbed my arm. "Nathan, you must go alone. The bloodline must face them alone. That is the only way to break the cycle." "What are you talking about?" "Your great-great-grandmother made a bargain. You must unmake it, but it requires 3 offerings, 3 choices, 3 sacrifices. I will tell you what they are, but you must reach Stronghold Table. You must face the old one." "I can't." "You can. You must." She pressed something into my hand. Her medicine bundle, the elaborate one she'd prepared. "Everything you need is here. The songs, the symbols, the offerings, but you must choose to make them. No one can force you. That is what makes them powerful." Tommy hit the brakes hard, bringing us to a stop about 50 yards from the wall of silent ones. "This is suicide." "It's the only way," Louise said. She looked at me with ancient eyes. "Your sister tried to run. That's why she died. You must face them, acknowledge them, respect them, and then make the choice that ends the debt." My radio crackled. Through the static, I heard screaming, more units going down, and underneath it all, that voice in my head, patient and hungry. "Whitebird blood, come to us. End this properly." I looked at Tommy. "Get Louise to safety. Report what happened here. And if I don't make it, you'll make it," he said, though his eyes said he didn't believe it. "You're too stubborn to die out here." I got out of the truck. The moment my feet hit the pavement, the silent ones stopped moving. Every single one of them turned to face me. Complete silence settled over the highway. No wind, no insects, no engine sounds. Just the sound of my breathing and my heart hammering against my ribs. Behind me, I heard Tommy drive away, carrying Louise to safety. Smart. They needed to survive to tell what happened. I started walking north on Highway 18 towards Stronghold Table. The silent ones parted before me, creating a corridor. They didn't attack. They just watched, dozens of them, their reflected eyes tracking my every step. I was alone on an empty highway in the middle of the reservation, surrounded by things that shouldn't exist, walking toward a confrontation that would either end the curse on my bloodline or add me to the list of victims. My radio died completely, the battery drained by the cold in the presence of so many silent ones. The temperature continued to drop until I could see my breath hanging in the air like fog. And ahead, on Stronghold Table, the Ancient One waited. The first of the silent ones. The creature that had touched my great-great-grandmother 135 years ago and marked my entire family line. I touched the protection bundle Louise had given me, feeling the weight of tobacco and corn pollen and sacred stones. 3 offerings, 3 choices, 3 sacrifices. I hoped to God she'd told me enough to survive what came next. The walk to Stronghold Table took 30 minutes, though it felt like hours. The silent ones kept pace with me on either side of the highway, never closer than 20 feet, never farther than 50. They didn't speak or make sound. They just watched with those reflected eyes, their bodies moving in that wrong way that made my brain hurt trying to process it. The cold intensified with every step. My fingers went numb, even inside my gloves. Ice crystals formed in my beard. But I kept walking, clutching Louise's medicine bundle, trying to remember everything she'd taught me in those 3 frantic days. 3 offerings, 3 choices, 3 sacrifices. I was halfway to Stronghold Table when I heard a groan from the ravine beside the highway. I stopped, and immediately the silent ones stopped too, maintaining their distance. "Hello?" I called out. "Nathan?" Tommy's voice, weak and pained. "That you?" I scrambled down the embankment and found him pinned in Agent Yellowhawk's overturned vehicle. His leg was trapped under the dashboard, blood running from a gash on his forehead. Agent Yellowhawk was unconscious in the driver's seat, breathing but unresponsive. "Can you move?" I asked, trying to free Tommy's leg. "Broken, I think. Listen." He grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "Your great-great-grandmother made a deal. She was dying in the snow, and they offered her life in exchange for a debt. The debt passes down through blood. That's why they're hunting your family. That's why Maya died. The debt comes due every few generations. How do I end it? 3 offerings. Louise told me while we were driving. She said you'd know what they meant when the time came. But Nathan..." His face was pale, shock setting in. "The offerings might kill you. She wasn't sure you'd survive." A sound from above made us both look up. Silent ones lined the edge of the ravine, watching. Not attacking, just observing. "They're letting me help you," I realized. "They want me to reach the table." "Then go. I'll be okay. Yellowhawk's alive. Someone will find us." Tommy pulled a small radio from his belt, older than the ones we normally carried. "Emergency frequency. Louise said she'd be listening. When you're ready to make the offerings, call her. She'll guide you through it." I took the radio, helped Tommy as comfortable as I could with Yellowhawk, and climbed back to the highway. The silent ones watched but didn't interfere. They were herding me, I understood now, guiding me to where this had to end. Stronghold Table rose from the plains like a fortress, its layered rock formations glowing pale in the starlight. The approach was a narrow trail that wound up the side, exposed and treacherous. I started climbing, and the silent ones didn't follow. They arranged themselves at the base, forming a circle around the entire formation, keeping others out, keeping me in. The air grew thicker as I climbed, like it was resisting my passage. Each breath became harder, colder. The silence was absolute now. No wind, no distant sounds of the highway, nothing but my footsteps on stone and the rasp of my breathing. At the top, I found them. 7 people arranged in a circle on the flat summit of Stronghold Table. 5 were the victims I recognized from Agent Yellowhawk's files: the missing teenagers, the middle-aged woman, the tribal police officer. 2 were people I didn't know, probably taken so recently they hadn't been reported yet. They were alive. Their chests rose and fell with shallow breathing, but their eyes were open and empty, staring at nothing, seeing nothing. Catatonic. Their bodies present but their minds somewhere else, trapped in the space between. "They dream," a voice said, and I spun around. 9 silent ones stood around the circle of victims, perfectly spaced. They were in full transformation now, 9 feet tall, skeletal and terrible, their antlered skulls catching starlight. But the one that spoke stood taller than the others, ancient beyond measure, its antlers branching in patterns that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them. The old one, the first, the creature that had marked Wan Bliska. They dream of the empty places. It continued, its mouth not moving, but the voice resonating in my skull. The spaces between heartbeats, between breaths, between life and death. It is not unpleasant. Many prefer it to the waking world. I forced myself to speak. Let them go. Why? They are owed to us. Dennis and his brothers offered them. The ceremonies were performed correctly. The debt is being paid. My great-great-grandmother's debt, not theirs. The debt passes through blood. Your family borrowed time, borrowed life, borrowed survival. Now the interest comes due. The creature tilted its skull face, studying me. Your sister understood too late. She tried to run. We are patient hunters. We always catch what runs. The old one moved, and its body seemed to phase through space, crossing 20 feet in a single fluid motion that made my eyes water. It stood before me now, close enough that I could smell it. Old bone and freezing wind and something else. Something that had no name in human language. She screamed your name, it said, and its face changed, shifted, became Maya's face, perfect in every detail. My sister looked at me with empty eye sockets and spoke with the old one's voice. Nate, help me. Where were you? Why didn't you answer my calls? You're not her, I said, though seeing Maya's face on that skeletal body made my chest ache. I am everything I consume. I tasted her. Love and regret, fear and determination. She wanted to live. She wanted to teach more students, fall in love, have children, all the things that make human life precious. The Maya face smiled with too many teeth. She tasted like hope, my favorite flavor. I wanted to charge at it, to attack, to make it hurt for wearing my sister's face. But I remembered Louisa's words. Acknowledge, respect, choose. I'm here to end the debt, I said, forcing my voice steady. To unmake the bargain, you cannot unmake what was freely given. The old one's face shifted back to the bleached elk skull. But you can take your sister's place, join us, guide others to us as Dennis and his brothers do. Walk between worlds, hunt in the spaces between, live forever in the silence between heartbeats. No. Then you will die here. Your bloodline will end with you, yes, but only after we have hunted every member of your family tree. Cousins, second cousins, every drop of whitebird blood. The debt will be paid in full. There's another way. I pulled out Louise's medicine bundle. 3 offerings, 3 choices, the old ceremonies that establish boundaries. The 9 silent ones went very still. Even the wind that shouldn't exist in this silence seemed to die further. You are no medicine man, the old one said. No, but I carry the blood that was marked. That gives me the right to speak. I opened the bundle, my hands shaking from cold and fear. Louise Stands Fast taught me. Elder of the Oglala Lakota, keeper of the old knowledge. She said the debt can be satisfied without more death. The debt requires blood, and I'm offering it, but on my terms. 3 offerings freely given, as the old ways require. I pulled out Tommy's emergency radio and keyed it. Louise, are you there? Static, then her voice, distant but clear. I'm here, Nathan. Are you ready? Tell me what to do. The first offering is acknowledgement. Speak their true name. Burn tobacco as witness. I pulled out the pouch of tobacco from the bundle and sprinkled it on the stone at my feet. From my pocket, I took out the lighter I'd carried since my first day as a cop. My hands shook as I lit the tobacco. As it began to smoke, I spoke in Lakota, words Louise had drilled into me. Wanagi Othangching, the silent spirits, I acknowledge you are old. You are real. You walked this land before the first people arrived, before names existed for the animals and stars. You were here in the beginning, and you will be here at the end. This is your truth. The tobacco smoke rose straight up in the windless air, and where it touched the silent ones, they became more solid, more present. The old one's antlers seemed to grow larger, more terrible. You acknowledge us, it said. This is the first offering. Continue. The second offering. Louise's voice crackled through the radio. Respect. Your blood on sacred ground. 3 drops, freely given, to establish the boundary. I pulled out my folding knife and cut my palm. The pain was sharp and bright, cutting through the numbing cold. I held my hand out and let 3 drops of blood fall onto the stone of Stronghold table. Wanagi Othangching, I respect your hunger. I respect your power. You are predators, and it is your nature to hunt. But I also respect the boundary between your world and ours. My great-great-grandmother crossed that boundary in desperation. I now re-establish it. With my blood freely given, I mark this line. You may not cross without invitation. You may not hunt those who respect the boundary. The blood on the stone began to glow, faint but growing stronger. The light spread outward in lines, forming a circle around me, around the victims, separating us from the silent ones. They hissed, a sound like wind through dead leaves, the only sound they'd made. Some stepped back from the glowing line, but the old one remained, its skull face impassive. 2 offerings given, but the debt is not yet satisfied. Your family still owes us for the life we gave Wanbli Ska. The 3rd offering, Louise said through the radio, her voice tight with worry. Choice, the hardest one. Nathan, you must choose to end the bloodline curse. Accept that some may die, that you may die. But the cycle ends. No more hunting, no more marking. The choice must be absolute. I looked at the 7 catatonic victims. If I ended the curse, would they wake? Or would they stay trapped forever in the space between? I didn't know. Louise hadn't known. This was the gamble. I thought about Maya, about her fierce determination to teach Lakota to the next generation, about my grandfather, who'd prepared protection medicine before he died, knowing this time would come, about Wanbli Ska, who'd made an impossible choice in the snow and darkness, who'd survived so that I could stand here now. I choose, I said loudly, in both Lakota and English. I choose to end this. My bloodline curse breaks here. No more hunting my family. No more marking our children. No more debts passed through generations. If the price is my life, I pay it. If the price is their lives. I gestured to the victims. Then I accept that too. But this cycle ends. Tonight. Now. I began the chant Louise had taught me. The old songs that predated the reservation, predated the massacre, predated everything but the land itself. The words were Lakota but older, mixed with languages that had been spoken here before the Lakota arrived. Songs that established boundaries and renewed the world. The light from my blood on the stone intensified, spreading across the entire summit of Stronghold Table. The silent ones shrieked. That wind through leaves sound amplified to a scream that I felt in my bones. You cannot break what was given, the old one roared, and its voice was like thunder, like the sound of stone cracking in frost. But I continued chanting, pouring everything I had into the words. The protection bundle in my hand grew hot, burning through my gloves. The tobacco smoke became a pillar of light, and the boundary circle blazed so bright I had to squint to see. Reality began to tear. I could see it happening, cracks appearing in the air itself, showing spaces beyond that my mind couldn't comprehend. Empty places where the silent ones came from. Voids between moments, between breaths, between existence and nothing. The old one fought against it, its massive form pressing against the barrier. This changes nothing. We are patient. When your people forget again, when they stop respecting the boundaries, we will return. We always return. Maybe, I gasped, the chant draining everything from me. But not for my family, not for our blood. The debt is paid. The boundary is redrawn. Return to the empty places, Wanagi Othangching. This world is not yours anymore. The final words of the ceremony left my mouth, and the light exploded outward in a wave that knocked me flat. I felt it wash over the silent ones, saw them being pulled backward through the tears and reality, dragged, kicking and screaming back to wherever they'd come from. The old one was the last to go. It locked its empty eye sockets on me, and in that moment, I felt the full weight of its age. Thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands, old beyond measure, patient beyond understanding. We remember, it said as the void swallowed it. We always remember. Then it was gone, and the tears sealed themselves with a sound like ice breaking on a frozen lake. The light faded. The circle dimmed and disappeared. And silence, real silence, with wind and distant sounds and the universe moving again, returned. I lay on the stone, gasping, every muscle in my body screaming in agony. The protection bundle had burned through my gloves and scorched my palm. My cut hand throbbed. I felt like I'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. But around me, the 7 victims were stirring. Their eyes blinked, focused, saw. They looked around in confusion, not remembering where they were or how they'd gotten here. "What?" one of the teenagers started. "Where are we?" I tried to answer but couldn't find the breath. Instead, I keyed the radio. "Louise, it's done. They're gone." "Nathan?" Her voice was thick with emotion. "You survived. By all the old spirits, you survived. The victims are waking up. We need medical response at Stronghold Table." Already on the way. Tommy radioed when he saw the light. He said it looked like the sun rose in the middle of the night, then went back down. I managed to sit up, my body protesting every movement. Dennis Charging Bear and the Whirlwind Twins lay at the base of Stronghold Table, visible in the pre-dawn light that was just beginning to touch the horizon. They were human again, fully human, no traces of transformation, unconscious but breathing. The silent ones were gone, the boundary was reestablished, and my family's curse, 5 generations old, was finally broken. I looked at my burned hand, at the scars that would mark me forever. 3 offerings, 3 choices, 3 sacrifices. I'd paid the price that Wanbli Ska had incurred 135 years ago, and somehow, impossibly, I'd survived. The sun rose over Stronghold Table in shades of gold and pink, painting the Badlands in colors that made them look less alien and more like the sacred land they'd always been. Medical helicopters arrived first, then ambulances, then what felt like every law enforcement officer on the reservation. The 7 victims were confused, but physically unharmed. They remembered nothing about their captivity, nothing about the space between where they'd been held. The youngest, a 17-year-old girl who'd been missing for 2 days, kept asking where her car was. The tribal police officer who'd vanished 3 weeks ago thought it was still the day he'd disappeared. "Mercy or curse?" Tommy asked me as we watched the paramedics load them into ambulances. His leg was in a splint, his head bandaged, but he'd refused to leave until he saw me walk off that table alive. "I don't know," I admitted. Maybe forgetting is the kindest thing. Agent Yellowhawk had a concussion and 3 broken ribs, but was conscious and already trying to write his report. How the hell do I explain this to the Bureau? He asked me, only half joking. We went in with 12 units and came out with 7 traumatized civilians, 3 suspects in custody, and reports of mass hallucination caused by, what? Swamp gas? Mass hysteria? You write what you saw, I said, and you let them decide what to do with it. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Your family's curse is really broken? Yeah, it's done. Good. He winced as paramedics helped him onto a stretcher. Next time you do supernatural diplomacy, I'm staying in the truck with Tommy. Dennis Charging Bear and the Whirlwind Twins were found at the base of Stronghold Table. Dennis was dead. The medical examiner would later rule it cardiac failure, though his face was frozen in an expression of absolute terror. The twins were alive, but catatonic, their minds apparently trapped in the same empty spaces they'd tried to harness. They would spend the rest of their lives in care facilities, staring at nothing, never speaking. Ironic, Louise said when I told her. They wanted to become silent ones. Now they're silent forever. 3 months passed. The reservation settled back into its rhythms. The dark moon came and went without incident. Highway 18 remained just a highway, empty of everything except the occasional deer and the trucks hauling goods across the plains. I was promoted to Cultural Liaison Ranger, a position Captain Blackhorn had created specifically for me. My job was to bridge the gap between traditional knowledge and modern law enforcement, to teach other rangers the protocols and why they mattered, to work with elders like Louise to document the old ways before they were lost. You understand both worlds now, Joe told me the day he pinned the new badge on my uniform. The city cop's procedural thinking and the traditional Lakota knowledge, that makes you valuable. That makes you necessary. Tommy became my official partner, and together we trained the new rangers. The protocols on the wall made sense to them now because I could explain not just what the rules were, but why they existed. Never follow elk tracks that show human stride, because that's a silent one hunting. If you hear complete silence in the Badlands, leave immediately, because something has swallowed the sound. During dark moon, stay off Highway 18, because that's when the boundaries are thinnest. Louise and I worked together 3 times a week, documenting ceremonies and songs that had been passed down orally for generations. She said I had a gift for it, the ability to hold the old knowledge while still thinking like a modern cop. We created training materials that other reservations requested, spreading the understanding that some things required traditional approaches. You've done something rare, she told me one afternoon as we worked in her office. You've walked between worlds without losing yourself in either one. Your great-great-grandmother would be proud. On a cold November morning, the tribal council held a ceremony. The whole community was invited, and hundreds came. They'd heard the stories, some accurate, some wildly embellished, about what had happened on Stronghold Table, about the ranger who'd broken a 5-generation curse and closed the door on the silent ones. Elder Louise spoke first, in Lakota, then translated to English. Nathan Whitebird has done what few have the courage to attempt. He faced the old powers, acknowledged them, respected them, and established boundaries that will protect us all. He broke a chain that bound his family for 6 generations. He paid the price with his own blood and suffering. We honor him today as a bloodline breaker, as a bridge between worlds, as one who walks in balance. She placed a medicine bundle around my neck, elaborate and heavy with meaning. This marks you as one who has walked in the space between and returned. carry it always. Teach others what you've learned. And remember, the boundaries must be maintained by each generation. What you've done will protect your family, but others must do the same work when their time comes. The community sang traditional songs, and I stood there feeling both humbled and overwhelmed. These were my people. This was my home. I'd spent 8 years running from it, thinking the city offered something better. But standing here, marked and honored, and finally understanding my place, I knew I'd never leave again. After the ceremony, I drove to the tribal cemetery. Maya's grave was on a hillside overlooking the plains, with a view of the Badlands in the distance. Someone had left fresh flowers, probably my aunt. I added my own offering, a photograph of Maya and me as kids, both smiling, both innocent of what was coming. I finished it, I said aloud. The curse that killed you, the debt that's haunted our family since Wambly Ska made her bargain. It's done. You can rest now. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of sage and grass, and for just a moment I felt her. Not the thing that had worn her voice outside my trailer, but Maya herself. My sister, finally at peace, no longer trapped in the space between. My radio crackled. Ranger Whitebird, we have a situation at Bear Butte. 2 hikers overdue. Their last check-in reported seeing someone familiar on the trail, but when they approached, the person moved wrong. They said it walked silent and wore their friend's face, but their friend is confirmed to be in Rapid City. Request your response. I keyed the radio. This is Whitebird. I'm en route. ETA 30 minutes. Back at the station, I geared up. Service weapon, protection bundle, corn pollen, the knowledge Louise had taught me. Tommy was waiting by the truck, his leg fully healed now, his expression serious but ready. Another one? He asked. Sounds like it. Could be nothing. Could be something testing the boundaries. The old one said they'd come back when people forgot. Then we make sure people don't forget. I climbed into the truck. We teach the protocols. We maintain the boundaries. We do the work. As we drove toward Bear Butte, the sun setting behind us and casting long shadows across the plains, I thought about everything that had brought me here. Maya's death, my return to the reservation, the protocols that had seemed like superstition, the night I'd faced the old one and somehow survived. The silent ones were gone, pushed back to the empty places. But the old one's final words echoed in my mind. We are patient. We always return. Maybe they would. Maybe when my generation was gone, and the next forgot to maintain the boundaries. Maybe when the protocols were dismissed as folklore again. Maybe when people stopped believing that some things were older and stranger than modern understanding could explain. But that wasn't today. Today, we had hikers to find and boundaries to maintain, and the ongoing work of protecting people from things that walked this land before we had words for fear. My name is Nathan Whitebird. I'm a Lakota tribal ranger and cultural liaison for the Oglala Lakota Parks and Recreation Department. I protect people from things they don't believe in. I teach others how to recognize when they've reached the boundary between the modern world and something older. I carry my great-great-grandmother's courage and the knowledge of 5 generations who survived because they understood that some debts must be paid and some boundaries must be maintained. The silent ones are patient. They wait in the empty places, in the space between heartbeats, in the silence that swallows sound. They remember every bargain made, every debt incurred, every boundary crossed. But I'm patient too, and I'll be here, watching the highways and the Badlands, maintaining the protocols, teaching the next generation, doing the work that keeps my people safe. Because this is what I do. This is who I am. And the boundaries will hold as long as someone remembers to maintain them.